For centuries, Europe craved the riches of the East, spices, silks, and jewels that made fortunes and built empires. These luxuries were more than just commodities, they were symbols of power, prestige, and the promise of a better life. The demand for these goods only grew, fueling the ambitions of merchants and monarchs alike. The Silk Road carried these treasures across vast deserts and treacherous mountains, but the journey was perilous and costly, with prices soaring at every stop. Each hand that touched the goods added another layer of expense, making spices and silks almost worth their weight in gold by the time they reached Europe. In 1453, the Ottoman Empire seized Constantinople, choking off Europe's access to Asian goods. The city, once a vital gateway between continents, now became a barrier. The Ottomans taxed or blocked trade, sending prices even higher and leaving European kingdoms desperate. The flow of wealth slowed to a trickle, threatening the prosperity of entire nations. Portugal and Spain, at the far end of the trade routes, felt the pinch most. Isolated from the main overland routes, they faced economic decline unless they could find a solution. Their solution? Find a new route to the east, by sea. The ocean, vast and mysterious, became their last hope. This wasn't just about profit, it was survival and supremacy. Whoever controlled the new route would control the future. The rivalry between Portugal and Spain intensified, each seeking to outmaneuver the other. The stakes were nothing less than global dominance. New technologies like the caravel and the astrolabe made long ocean voyages possible. These innovations gave explorers the confidence to venture into the unknown. Backed by ambitious monarchs, explorers set out into the Atlantic, chasing a new destiny. Their journeys would reshape the world map. They weren't just seeking spices, they were seeking power and a place in history. Every voyage was a leap into the unknown, driven by dreams of glory. The age of exploration had begun, driven by necessity, greed, and bold innovation. The world was opening up in ways no one could have imagined. The world was about to change forever. New continents, new peoples, and new riches awaited discovery. No one knew what awaited them beyond the horizon. The gamble was enormous, and the risks were real. But the potential rewards were greater still. For those willing to risk everything, the promise of unimaginable wealth and eternal fame beckoned from across the seas. Into this age of ambition and exploration stepped Christopher Columbus, an Italian sailor with a radical plan that would challenge the limits of the known world. He believed he could reach Asia by sailing west across the Atlantic, bypassing the long and perilous Portuguese route around Africa. It was a gamble that few dared to imagine. Most experts dismissed him as a dreamer, but Spain's monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella, eager to outdo Portugal and expand their own empire, decided to take the risk. In 1492, Columbus set sail with 3 ships and a small, determined crew, venturing into the vast unknown, with only hope and faith to guide them. After weeks at sea, battered by storms and uncertainty, land finally appeared, an island in the Bahamas, lush and unlike anything they had seen before. Columbus thought he'd reached Asia, calling the locals Indians. He had no idea he'd stumbled upon a continent unknown to Europeans. He found no great cities of gold, but the ornaments and treasures he did discover convinced Spain that the voyage was worth every risk. Columbus returned a hero, his tales sparking a frenzy of excitement and competition across Europe. Portugal, furious at being outmaneuvered, claimed the new lands as theirs, igniting a fierce rivalry. To avoid war, Spain and Portugal turned to the Pope, the most powerful religious figure in Europe, to settle their dispute. The Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494 drew an imaginary line down the globe. Spain would claim lands to the west, Portugal to the east. This decision was made with a stroke of a pen, with little understanding of the lands or peoples involved. This arbitrary division ignored the millions of indigenous people already living there, whose lives and cultures would soon be forever changed. The line would shape the fate of South America for centuries, setting the stage for conquest, colonization, and conflict. The race for empire was on, as European powers scrambled to claim new worlds and new riches. The world map was being redrawn by European hands, with little regard for those who already called these lands home. The consequences would be profound, echoing through history, and ultimately, irreversible. Spain wasted no time exploiting its claims, eager to expand its empire and wealth in the New World. Driven by dreams of gold and glory, Spanish explorers and soldiers set out to conquer unknown lands across the Atlantic. Their first foothold was the Caribbean, where colonization began with shocking brutality. Spanish settlers established forts and settlements, quickly subjugating the local populations. Conquistadors forced native populations into harsh labor, devastating them with violence, enslavement, and above all, disease. The indigenous way of life was shattered almost overnight. Smallpox and other European illnesses swept through the islands, wiping out entire communities. Within decades, populations collapsed, leaving villages empty and cultures forever changed. With the islands stripped of people and resources, Spanish eyes turned to the mainland, lured by persistent rumors of vast, wealthy empires and cities of gold. In 1519, Hernán Cortés led a small force to Mexico, where he encountered the mighty Aztec Empire, ruled by the powerful Moctezuma II. The Aztecs were sophisticated, with grand cities and complex societies. Cortés took advantage of Aztec rivalries, superior weapons, and a devastating smallpox outbreak to conquer Tenochtitlan in 1521. The city fell after a brutal siege, marking the end of Aztec rule. The Aztec Empire collapsed, its treasures seized and shipped to Spain. The Spanish thirst for wealth seemed insatiable. A decade later, Francisco Pizarro repeated the pattern in Peru, toppling the Inca Empire with fewer than 200 men. The Incas, once rulers of a vast Andean realm, were caught off guard. The Inca, weakened by civil war and deadly European diseases, were no match for Spanish tactics, deception, and superior weaponry. Their resistance crumbled quickly. Gold and silver poured into Spain, fueling its rise as a global superpower and transforming the world economy. The riches of the Americas changed European history forever. The native empires were shattered, their monuments left in ruins and their cultures suppressed under colonial rule. The Spanish conquest was swift, ruthless, and utterly transformative, leaving a legacy of destruction and change across two continents. The Americas would never be the same. The landscape, peoples, and cultures were forever altered by conquest and colonization. The age of indigenous empires was over, their achievements and histories left to be rediscovered centuries later. A new colonial order had begun, reshaping the Americas and setting the stage for the centuries to come. Portugal's claim in the Americas began with a twist of fate, Cabral's accidental landing in Brazil. At first, Brazil seemed unimpressive. No gold, no great civilizations, just Brazil wood for red dye. For decades, Portugal's presence was limited to coastal trading posts. But as rival Europeans appeared, Portugal moved to secure its claim, dividing the coast into captaincies for settlement. The real transformation came with sugar. The climate was perfect for sugarcane, but plantations needed vast labor. Native peoples resisted and died from disease, so Portugal turned to enslaved Africans. Millions were brought to Brazil, fueling a brutal plantation economy. Sugar made Brazil rich and deeply dependent on slavery. The land, the people, and the economy were reshaped forever. Brazil became the world's leading sugar producer. The legacy of this system would endure for centuries. Spain and Portugal's wealth drew the envy of France, England, and the Netherlands. At first, these powers raided Spanish ships in search for a northwest passage to Asia. Explorers like Cartier, Frobisher, and Hudson mapped the coasts, but found no easy route. Early settlements failed, Roanoke vanished, French outposts were destroyed. Success came slowly. Jamestown survived on tobacco, Quebec thrived on fur, and the Dutch founded New Amsterdam. These fragile outposts were the seeds of future empires. North America lacked instant riches, but perseverance paid off. Colonies grew through trade, agriculture, and migration. The competition for land and resources intensified. The stage was set for a new era of colonial rivalry. Early relations between Europeans and Native Americans were complex, marked by trade, cooperation, and conflict. Colonists depended on native knowledge to survive, while trade transformed indigenous societies. The French built alliances through fur trading. The English seeking land sparked wars and displacement. European hunger for territory led to broken treaties and brutal conflicts. Firearms intensified native rivalries and warfare. Differing views of land ownership fueled misunderstandings and disputes. Missionaries sought to convert and assimilate native peoples, often erasing cultures. The encounter was a collision of worlds with lasting consequences for all. Colonial economies thrived on cash crops, tobacco, sugar, rice, grown on plantations. These vast farms demanded cheap, controllable labor. Native populations, decimated by disease and resistance, could not meet the need. The solution enslaved Africans. brought across the Atlantic in the horrific Middle Passage. The triangular trade turned people into property, fueling immense wealth for Europe. Life for the enslaved was brutal. Endless labor, violence, and family separation. Slavery became the foundation of colonial economies, especially in Brazil and the Caribbean. The human cost was staggering, millions suffered and died. This system shaped societies and left scars that endure. The legacy of slavery is inseparable from the story of the Americas. By the mid-1700s, the Americas were a patchwork of European empires, each with its own character. Spanish America was vast, centralized, and rigidly hierarchical. Brazil was a plantation society dominated by sugar and slavery. New France was sparsely populated, focused on fur and alliances with natives. The English colonies were diverse, New England for religion, the South for plantations, the Middle colonies for trade. Local self-government flourished in English America, sowing seeds for future change. Life was harsh, but the promise of land and opportunity drew migrants. New societies emerged, blending European, African, and native cultures. The New World was becoming something entirely new. By the late 1700s, colonization had reshaped the world, economically, politically, and culturally. Europe's rise was fueled by American wealth, but at a staggering human cost. Indigenous societies were shattered, millions of Africans enslaved. Rivalries between empires led to global wars and mounting debts. Imperial crackdowns clashed with new colonial identities and demands for self-rule. Enlightenment ideas of liberty and rights took root in the Americas. The stage was set for revolution and the birth of new nations. The legacy of colonization, conflict, inequality, and the quest for freedom would shape the continent's future.